Hi, where would you jump and why? Well, jump, I'm wearing my husband's hat because I want to talk to you about my husband's game. My husband in general, he's a Vietnam veteran. He doesn't usually want to play games, but he has one game he really likes. And I thought we'd talk about it because it's fun. It's really fun. It's called Jump. And of course, it's science fiction. Has to do with getting in a time capsule and jumping from either where you live to somewhere else, the time you're living in to some other time, place, to another person. You want to meet a person, or maybe you want to meet somebody who's died or somebody in the future. It just gives you a whole bunch of options. And it's really, really good for us, especially as adults wanting to feed that inner child, because games are good for us. They really help heal that inner child, that whole concept of having some way to imagine something so different than what's available to you. And yet, if you play it with another person, oh my gosh, it's fun. I remember we were involved, oh, it was so sad, we were involved in a real estate scam. And we had invested a lot of money in our Eco Hobbit house. You might have seen it on some of my other videos. We made this incredible Hobbit house, a beautiful, big, round door made of wood, and the whole house was made of stone all the way around, backed into a mountain. Sod roof with the solar panels were up on the roof. Dry composting toilet, all just the pure mountain water coming in. Yeah, it was really a special place, something we both dreamed about for over 30 years before we did it. And because the person scammed us, my husband's jump was to take her into the future, into a future, some kind of a prison cell, where she would be psychologically given music or sounds or voices or whatever about being a better person to transform her personality. I mean, you could do anything with that. Anything with the concept of jumping. Now, for me, oh gosh, I'd love to jump back. I don't know why the 1860s have always appealed to me. I think really because I once made an outfit, a dress, a costume for the 1860s. Of course, I couldn't get the shoes, but I made the costume. It was a blue and white dress, and fit very snugly, of course, at the waist. And this was years ago, because that was the style. And it was supposed to be a farmer's dress, so something that a woman would wear if she was going to town from the farm. And it was cute. It was difficult to make. And it always amazed me at the different patterns and styles and pictures that I looked at about how complicated a lot of the sewing was. And of course, most of the people didn't have sewing machines. I mean, you got enough stuff to bring in a trailer or coach or camper or whatever that you're bringing to get into the Wild West back in 1860. I believe all of them were with horses. I'm not sure. Maybe some of them were with donkeys or mules or oxen. I don't really know that well. I've watched a lot of Westerns in my life, but you don't know how much that's really true. But the whole concept just really appealed to me. And again, it's about that inner child. Imagining things we know we really can't do, but we're using our imagination, something kids don't do anywhere near enough of right now, but when we were children, they did. I mean, we used to play kick the can. We used to, always draw a hopscotch in chalk on the sidewalk. I mean, everybody I knew did that. And we used to use a jump rope where somebody's on either end of the rope and somebody in the middle is jumping. I mean, that was how we entertained ourselves. We didn't have television. I was in my teenage years before I ever saw a television, and it was a little tiny thing, smaller than an iPad. I mean, we had to entertain ourselves with what we saw around us, and that's why jumping is really fun. Let's imagine that I wanted to jump to Washington State, into a redwood tree, like Butterfly did. Butterfly was a incredible gal. I don't remember her real name, but when we had the ranch, there was a gal who came there. She played the guitar, and she had written a song about Butterfly and how she had gone up into the redwood tree and built herself a way to be able to stay up there. People would send food up to her and bandages or something if she got hurt or whatever. And she stayed there for the longest time to keep people from cutting down the tree. She was an environmentalist like myself. She was an advocate, wonderful young woman advocate. The years I can remember but can't be a part of anymore. And I would just, the idea that I could jump at this age and go and sit up in that tree and talk to her about what motivated her to make that choice, and how long had she been there, and what did she think about while she was up there, and how did she pass the time. And oh gosh, there'd be so many questions to ask, because when you're talking to somebody like that, you're talking to a real old soul. She wasn't playing with her inner child. I would be playing with my inner child to go there, because it would all be an imagination. And we'd not be on the same wavelength, because I'm old and I would still be me, and we would go back in time to her when she was, I believe she was in her early 20s. Just such an amazing feat, such an amazing act. It's an amazing thing to do. I know my husband would probably jump to Carl Sagan. That's his hero. Oh gosh, he loved Carl Sagan so much. I don't know how many times we've talked about how we would love to jump to me. I love to cook and I love to host, and so does my husband. We love to host dinner parties. That we would host a dinner party with Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse. Oh my gosh. You wouldn't say a word. I wouldn't. My husband would. He would ask a zillion questions. But I would just sit there in awe and being around such brilliant minds. Now, if I were to have a dinner party for women, I would invite Joanna Macy and Mary Farkas. Mary Farkas was the administrator of the First Institute of America. And when I was in my 20s, she was in charge there in New York. It was in New York City, and incredible place. I have to tell you, I got the impression, such a strong impression, that it was like, oh man, she doesn't know anything. She's so young. And I didn't. That was true. I didn't know anything. And I didn't understand things. Nothing like I understand now about Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. I learned how to sit. I copied her robe and made my own robe. I talked to her later. I telephoned her when my mother was dying. That kind of a jump back. And of course, I would do the one thing that I've said so many times I'd love to jump to. I'd love to jump back to a time when my father was calm. Maybe when he was doing a barbecue in the backyard, yeah. that he had such bad PTSD from the Korean War. He also served in World War II, but the Korean War was where he really was harmed emotionally. And to be in the backyard with him, having a barbecue for the neighbors, would be the perfect time for me to walk up and introduce him to my husband. And my husband was a captain in the Air Force, just like my beloved uncle was a captain in the Air Force. And my dad and my uncle were just best friends. Gosh, they were. In fact, my uncle died in a plane that my father and my uncle had talked about wasn't safe to fly in, and yet my uncle did it, and he lost his life. And he had PTSD too from Vietnam War, so maybe he wasn't meant to. But the point is, I could bring my father and my uncle together with my husband and introduce them. What a priceless jump, huh? What do you think? I'm here today to stimulate you to think of where you would jump. That's why I'm giving you so many examples. I mean, you could jump back to Neanderthal time if you wanted to. You could jump to any indigenous village you'd ever thought of. Wouldn't that be something? You could jump to see how our American Indians lived. You could jump into a parliament office in England or Congress or Senate office here in the United States. Not here, I'm in Ecuador. I don't want to be in the United States right now. That's really not, my husband can't breathe there. The air is so dirty. The air is really clean here. We're about to have a rainstorm. That's why I decided to grab my husband's hat. It's a Tilly hat. I don't know if you ever heard of that. Tilly, they're very famous hats for people who spend time outdoors. Yeah, I have a very old Tilly hat that you may have seen in one of my videos. I bought it secondhand online because I wanted to own a Tilly, and a Tilly is a really expensive hat. They actually will return it to you if you lose it and your name's in it. Isn't that exciting? I thought that was really fun. Anyway, we could jump to the Tilly manufacturer. Yeah, we could do that. Or we could jump to there was a chiropractic table, the Thompson table, that was so amazing when I was a stowaway in the chiropractic college. My husband was working. He'd finished his courses, and I was taking his last course in his place so that he could work and his name would still be on the register. Oh, yeah, it was really naughty. Oh, but I enjoyed it so much. Oh, man, I have to tell you that the whole medical field to me is so fascinating, and to be able to jump back to different parts of medicine. Oh, wouldn't that be fun? Oh my gosh, back to when they bled people or put leeches on them, just to learn about why they thought it would work and what did work and what didn't work, and go jump and study with an herbalist who was well known, or a shaman. Oh, I'd love to study with a shaman. Find out what they're thinking and why they're thinking it. And, would I be fortunate enough to find one? Maybe that's what we could say too, that in jumping you would be, because this is all imaginary, why not? In jumping you'd be able to talk the language of any place you jumped. Wouldn't that be something? To be able to really understand what they were thinking. And when I think about healing and philosophy, wow, there's some philosophers I'd love to jump back at their feet and learn from them. I have the incredible honor of working with a young man he's now 17, who when he was 12 read a book, I swear it was 3.5 inches thick. He read it on philosophers, different philosophers, when he was 12 years old. He's just brilliant. It's such a joy because being a SPED teacher, a special education teacher, my entire career was teaching kids with disabilities. And yet in the program you're taught both ends of the spectrum. And that's part of the reason I did it, because my oldest son was in the top half percentile of intelligence. And I knew how to be with him and stimulate him, and I just love working with this kid. But he one day, I hadn't been with him very long. I think we've been together about 3 years. He brought this great big book, and he said, I read this about these philosophers. It's really interesting. And I thought, oh boy, there's nothing like being stretched when you're teaching. But the idea of being able to jump to any teacher teaching you anything you wanted to know, I mean, what an option. And maybe, you know, what I'd really like to do is to jump to my grandfather when I was 3 and he was making a cradle for me. What would you do? Think about it. Those are just a few ideas of way you could heal your inner child with your own imagination, just by thinking. If there was a time capsule, a scientific time capsule that you could jump into, like the movie, yeah, I know, and you could jump somewhere else with someone else, living or dead, and you could put any age person together, people who could have never been together, what would you do? How would you do it? Think about it. Really, I mean that. Because if you think about it, you're healing that inner child, those childlike things that you like to do, and people you'd like to be with, things you'd like to experience. I mean, you could experience being in the Olympics. You could experience ice skating. You could experience climbing Mount Everest. There's no end to the options available to you. That's the whole point. One of the things that's been taken from us, I'll never forget the first time I saw the Etch-a-Sketch. I went, oh no, they've taken drawing away from kids. Little guys learning how to draw, making childlike pictures that we all just adore. Why would they do that? Well, I know some kids don't have the ability, but what bothers me is I'm always afraid a child will think that their work is not as priceless, it's not as perfect. Oh gosh, that's the last thing we need, is for kids to think they have to be perfect. That's a good way to really, really ruin your outlook on life, is to think that unless you're perfect, you shouldn't try something. I mean, the Tilly hat is so perfect that they'll get it back to you if you lose it, or they'll fix it if something goes wrong. But very few things in life. I mean, even the Oriental rug weavers would always put an error somewhere because only the gods are perfect. And there's a lot of truth to that. We don't have to be perfect. We're lucky enough to be alive. We don't have to be perfect. We have to show up. And that's what I'm here for. Because I'm telling you, I'm showing up. I'm making the videos and I'm showing up because I have a lot to say. I've been a lot of places. I've done a lot of things in my life. And I'd like to have a record of that. I'd like to record that. I want to make a record. It takes some coaching. And I'm real grateful for the people who've helped me. But I'm here. And you, excuse me, if you have questions, put them down in the description. Happy to answer. Happy to check out things for you. Happy if you have any ideas about what else you'd like to hear me talk about. Because I have done a lot of things in my life. Been a lot of places. Seen a lot of people. Talked to a lot of different outlooks on life. Cultures. Views. Oh, but this view, boy, isn't this something? It looks like we're going to have some rain, and I just love watching how the clouds are moving around, and Gosh, and so often I can see the moon, or the moon. It shows up so frequently, even in this time of the day when it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But everything goes to sleep here at a little after 6. This is summer, so it goes just a little later. It's a little closer to almost 7. No, 6:45. It's real fast, because when the sun goes behind the mountain, it's over. It's just over. That's the way it is. I love living in the mountains, and that's the way it is. It's over. But where would you go behind the mountains? Where would you jump to? Would you jump far away or close? Would you go look at the sun, or would you go somewhere else? Would you think about it? Anyway, down in the description is also stories about the different things my nonprofit's done over the last 34 years. And there's some artwork down there by 2 of us who are over 75, 2 women. If you're interested in reminders of honoring the earth, that's why we make them. That's what motivates us. So thank you for being here. Hope to see you again.